It's like the Tesla of wellness. Actually, the financial benefit. Why? Because of speed of construction.
All right, so thank you very much for being with us today, guys. I'm so happy to have you here. Jeshua, we will introduce you in a second. We're going to talk today about construction, wooden materials, a lot of technologies in the construction sector and manufacturing processes. And probably one of the key things about these wooden materials is usually sustainability. And we hear a lot about sustainability today, green construction or greener construction, greenwashing in construction companies. So we want to try to tackle down a lot of these trending topics that we usually hear about. So first of all, thank you so much for making the time and being with us today. I'm very happy and excited to hear more about you. So thanks a lot for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me here. My name is Jeshua Sadeli. I'm the CEO and founder of Woodlam Indonesia. And Felipe, it's a pleasure to finally sit down with you, and we hope to have a good conversation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So first and foremost, can you tell us a little bit about Woodlam, the company you work for? I understand it's a family business. So can you give us a little bit of background of yourself and the company?
Sure. So Woodlam Indonesia, we're actually the first wood consultant, local wood consultant in Indonesia. We don't really have companies like wood consultancy. There's a lot of wood manufacturers, there's a lot of wood suppliers, there's a lot of wood product applicators, but there's not really industry focusing on construction or how do we consult to actually build and plan to build an engineered building out of wood.
Yeah, it actually sounds interesting. Wood consultant. Like, it sounds like a new concept to me. So what actually means the consultant piece?
Okay, so wood consulting, maybe the difference is when you're a wood supplier, you would usually come to a developer, you come to a project architect, or you come to a project owner. You would showcase all your products, right, like flooring or decking, and you would say, this is my specifications and this is my sizes. Whoever gives the best price, the best discount, they get the project.
Right.
That's what I categorize as a wood supplier. When you're a wood consultant, you're actually working together with the architect and the project owner. How do we sort of engineer this building to make sure that all the pieces can fit in to come one? Right. There's a lot of people who understand how to manufacture material, but there's not a lot of people who understand construction. So that's where a wood consultant would come in. They would specify the wood, they would specify the products, they would specify the materials. They would also do the engineering for the wood construction, and they would also help to manage manufacturing all the way to delivery and installation on site.
Wow, amazing. I truly, I've never heard. I think I will be more familiar to the wood supplier, as you call it. So great job, because it sounds like a much more intelligent way to go to involve you guys at the early stages of a design before starting any construction, or even to work along with the architecture team.
Correct.
So how about the story behind Woodlam? How did it start?
Okay, so Woodlam Indonesia was a company that we started officially in 2016. Actually, it started off as a business development unit at one of our family business companies, who is also focusing on manufacturing of wood and exporting to all over the world. Our biggest markets are the US and the UK. But I always felt that, it's a big family business and or a good size family business. I always wanted to do something by myself. And at the time, I went to Australia. So I lived in Australia for 6 years. I was in
6 years.
6 years.
There
I was
you go.
in high school in Perth for 2, and then I was at Melbourne for 4. Every time going to school in Australia, we'd be coming home to Indonesia just because it's very close, right? For example, sometimes it's cheaper to go home from Perth for a weekend than to stay in Perth and live there.
Oh, wow.
So what was interesting was I noticed that there's a lot of differences. I mean, my family, they're quite international people, so we travel the world. We've been everywhere before. And every time we travel, I'd always be so mesmerized at how things are very clean, how things are very well organized, how things are very paid well attention to, right? Every time we come back to Indonesia, I always felt like, oh my goodness, we're going back to this place again. Indonesia has evolved a lot. It has evolved a lot now compared to when I was younger, obviously, but the story of Woodlam came up because of my life story and my life journey. So one of the things that I noticed was in Indonesia, when I come home from the airport, coming back from Australia, you walk in, nice terminal, it's big, but then the ceiling is falling off. the apa kaca nih, the glass, they have handprints and they have a lot of those kind of things, and that just made me felt so apa ya, so sort of driven, I guess, to sort of
Right,
want to try
right.
to change that. You know, maybe being an Indonesian, educated abroad, you sort of have some idealistic ideas that you'd really like to bring back and apply.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, in our own country. So I always thought of Woodlam, and we had a tagline was apa ya, to improve the quality of life experienced by the nation.
Wow.
Right, so it's a very
That's
big
a big-
tagline. It's a
yeah,
very
exactly.
big vision. It's a very big goal. And I always thought of Woodlam as just a vehicle. So when I say to improve the quality of life experienced by the nation, when I say the nation, I'm not talking about the whole entire nation. I'm talking about myself. I am the nation too.
Yeah.
My family is the nation too.
But
My-
that's actually a good way to look at it, because if you can start by yourself and then your close environment, then you can probably generate a true impact.
Exactly. Well, that's at least the hope, I guess. You know.
Yeah.
So for us, it was more towards the quality of life, right? So there's two keywords in that statement to improve the quality of life experienced by the nation. Number one, the nation, which is me, myself too, my team, my family, my friends, my parents. We are the nation, and the quality of life, right? Quality of life is very important for me. Again, living in Australia, living abroad, having traveled all over the world, we have that quality of life. When we come back to Jakarta, it's a very different quality of life, you know. Of course, you can say, oh, you know, Indonesia, very mewah, we like to say, or very extravagant, let's say, in Jakarta, right? But the quality of life for the mass is not there, you know. And I consider myself to also be the mass in Indonesia. So when we talk about quality of life, we're talking about four pillars, in my opinion. Pillar number one, we're talking about first health, right? In order to have a good quality of life, you must have good health. You must be healthy, you must exercise, you must eat well, you must sleep well, so on and so forth. Number two, money. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to anybody, money is very important. If we don't have money, we can't do anything.
True that.
How can you change the world without money? How can you change perceptions? How can you educate people? How can you grow a certain market or an industry without money? It's impossible. Number three, family. Very important, right? What is all this for if it's not for family? All our efforts, all our hard works. And the last one, most importantly, peace. You cannot have health, money, and family without peace. So these are the four pillars that for me contribute to quality of life. And why Woodlam? Because our family has been in the wood industry for so long. We've been 50 years now. In 2024 this year. So I thought that that's the vehicle, you know, and that's something that I'm familiar with. So a lot of the Indonesian businessmen, you know, when they're rich, they start building American design houses, you know, with marble and all white and things like that. I would like to say that actually my father is one of the very first few wood manufacturers who actually have a house out of timber. And that house was built in 2003. So at the time I was only 11 years old. And I watched that house being built from zero all the way to completion. That time we were bringing big, huge blocks of wood, you know, from the forest directly. And this is 12-meter
Raw
long
material.
raw material. This was cut on site.
Wow.
And it was being installed. So I saw that house being built. It's a 2-story house. It's in Rancamayan, Bogor. I'd like to invite you one day.
Oh, thank you.
And in that house, throughout the years, I watched how to maintain it. I watched the details, what works, what doesn't work. I watched what to do when there's a termite infestation, when there's mold, when there's decay. How do we handle these kind of situations? So all those things contributed to the idea of why we make Woodlam Indonesia actually, right? To actually educate the market how to use timber.
I love the way, first of all, the passion you have when you speak about this, not from a business perspective, but from the emotional part that it means, the factory, the brand, and the story behind, so related to your personal experience and life is just truly admirable. I haven't heard that from many businesses around. So congratulations for everything you guys have as a family and as a business. It's truly impressive.
Thank you. Well, we're still working on it. You know, it's still a work in process. Right now to 2004, this will be our 8th year of business, independently. Yeah, not with the family group. So actually, I wanted to create that business, Woodlam. It just so happens to be an engineered wood because I saw that's the most innovative product. But the real idea was because I have to somewhat feel that, I don't know, in Indonesia or the Indonesian culture, it's very common that the eldest son or the child sort of takes over and gets involved in the family business, right? And I told my father at the time, you know, coming back from university, if I was to do this, if I was to have the same expertise like you for your last time you're working for 40 years, you want me to speed up everything in 5 years, I'm going to go crazy.
Yeah, of course.
So I did help him in the family business. We did create a corporate team and things like that to be able to bridge between us. But I also felt that I need to learn how to become a leader. I need to learn how to run my own team. I need to learn how to deal with rejection. This is something that we don't really...
It's a big part of it, right?
Right? So, you know, and that's why I created Woodlam. Because one day, all those positions will have to be filled by my people.
Wow.
Not just my family's people, not just by other people, but by my people.
So now Woodlam is an independent business from this family business, right?
Yes.
That you've been leading for all of this time. And you are, Woodlam in itself is this wood consultant, as you call it,
Yes.
that works with you in the project development from early till the end of the project.
Correct.
Amazing.
So we like to say we're actually wood consultants with manufacturing capability.
There you go. That's a completely different way to put it. Brilliant.
I don't like
Brilliant.
saying I'm a wood factory that can consult in your project. No, that's not
You
right.
touching all of the points, the what, how, and the why. So amazing. So tell me a little bit about the story. I have heard that Indonesia entirely has a big story with wood construction. What is all that about?
Okay, so back in our ancestors' generations, right? This is like way back. Everything was built out of wood in Indonesia. Yeah, even some today. If we look at our ports, if we look at our rel kereta, yeah, trains, if we look at just traditional housings in the villages and areas, this is all still mainly built out of wood. Indonesia, as you know, and the whole world knows, Kalimantan is the lungs of the world, right? It's the lungs of the world.
Yeah,
You know, we have such huge forestry. But it got left behind, unfortunately, you know, and this is actually history, right? So in the past, everyone used to build all their houses, public buildings, schools, ports.
Everything made out of wood.
Everything made out of wood. But of course, when the Dutch came over to colonize us, concrete starts to coming in with bricks. And then after the Dutch, the Japanese came, right? They brought in steel. And I think that was seen as a socio-economic status to have their own houses or buildings made out of concrete, bricks, and steel. To use wood was seen as something that's of local and low class. And I think eventually that's why timber was left behind throughout the years, unfortunately.
Very unfortunate.
Yeah, because before, if we look at all the traditional vernacular designs, this is all rumah umpak, you know, or they were lifted above the ground. You know, that's why it was proper and real to use wood. But today, everything is directly to the ground.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Then you got concrete poured, and then you got steel and things like that. So I think when the Japanese came, you know, Indonesia sort of left behind our tradition, and we sort of followed to build using steel and concrete, because at that time was Masa Jaya Indonesia, ya kita sebutnya. It was the golden era of Indonesia. We just had our independence, and everything was growing very quickly.
Right, right. And so how about if we jumped up to these days, where you can see a little more construction, right, and a little bit more opening to these new materials. And we have places such as this beautiful villa we are sitting right now, the very first ELEMENTIS project, made out of this laminated wood and glulam timber, right? So tell me a little bit about that, the glulam timber and the benefits for construction or health improvement. Does it have any impact in people or just the process itself?
Sure. So glulam actually is short for glued laminated timber, right? When we talked about engineered wood, there's a lot of different engineered wood products. Number one, you have cross-laminated timber, which is the big panels, right? People use for floors, for walls. You have glulam, which is glued laminated timber. This is post and beam construction. Then, of course, you have all your other LVL material, LVB, you know, and so on and so forth. So glulam is a post and beam construction. It's basically we are trying to create a homogeneous beam, right? How do we create a homogeneous beam that can span a big size? That's something that wood just solid or naturally by itself cannot do, right? It's been very difficult for Indonesian people to calculate or build with wood structures because when they cut the trees, they don't know the density, they don't know the size, they don't know the age, and henceforth, how can you actually calculate the structure?
Right.
For example, a common building material in Indonesia, wood, very known is ulin, right? We call it ironwood. Now, ironwood can be of any size, can be very big, but number one, it's actually illegal. Illegal to be used out of Kalimantan.
Right.
And number two, you really don't know how to calculate it. How do we calculate an ulin wood structure? We don't know the density, we don't know the mechanical properties, everything on paper and actual, how do we check that?
Yeah.
So that's what solid timber cannot do, right? We're limited in Indonesia to 4-meter lengths because of transport. Now, when you do glulam, number one, the beam is homogeneous because you're actually using small pieces which you actually control and grade to find out the density. You join them together and then you laminate them to become a long beam.
Right.
So that's when we use glulam, when you cannot use wood that's below 4 meters in length, number one. Number two, when you're actually trying to create structure, right? Because once you control in the factory the process of making these beams, you know exactly the mechanical properties and how it performs.
Right. So easy for you to calculate and to
Correct.
design everything.
Only then we can start to design,
Yeah.
calculate, and that's why we have big spans, as you can see in this villa.
Yeah, amazing. So, and do you think that the market is somehow more educated at the moment, or even people like that regularly would demand these products for their houses?
I'd like to think so, but we're in the very early stages in Indonesia because this actually glulam construction in Indonesia is not something that is new. I am not the innovator. I am not the one who brought this. No, we just sort of sparked it up a little bit, and I think drive it with passion. I think that's what helped engage. Because if you look at ITB, this is Institut Teknologi Bandung. It's a university in Bandung. They have what they call Aula Barat. In that Aula Barat, this is actually German or Austrian engineers 100 years ago. They made a glulam structure, and until today, it is still there, and it's a curved structure.
Again, it's curious that people is not demanding more of it
Because of
today.
understanding and know-how.
Right.
So if we go back to that, Indonesians were so familiar using concrete and steel construction.
You just keep doing it.
The know-how in regards to wood, they
Gets
leave
lost.
it, right? And it gets lost. So I always believe people are afraid of what they don't know. Once they know, then it's not something to be afraid of. But if you don't know, if you don't understand, if you have no expertise, then of course it's not something that you want to touch or meddle with, right? So, and that's where Woodlam comes in to step up to sort of help the owners and the architects guide through that whole process to make sure that this system works and we can build it. And so this is what we get.
Now, thinking about I'm continuing to think about people and the way we, just normal people that has no lots of information or is not being educated, there's a lot of belief that cutting down trees to get these wood materials is not sustainable for the planet. So what would you say? What's your take on that?
Okay, so this is a very interesting question to ask, right? A lot of people have the misconception that, oh, as a wood manufacturer and a wood exporter, you're ruining the forest, you're not sustainable, and you're ruining the whole ecosystem. Well, I have a few contests to that. Number one, if we are focused on export and doing the wood business, what kind of business you have if you cannot control and monitor your supply? You don't have a business.
No business at all.
And number two, if the quality of wood and you cannot control in terms of the planting, in terms of how you manage the sustainable forest, how are we going to export our wood all over the world without certification?
Yeah, it won't be accepted
It
anywhere.
will not be accepted anywhere. So is it really us wood manufacturers that are ruining the forest? We should actually question the other industry players, right? We should question gold mines. We should question palm oil plantations. We should question coal, coal mines also. Coal mines, gold mines, palm oil plantations. These are the companies that we should question. Because once they get the certification from the government to open land, they're not opening only couple hundred hectares, right? They're opening 2 million hectares, 1 million hectares. And you have to question yourself, where does that wood go? For us in the wood business, when we do export, we are required certification, whether it's FSC, FLECT, SVLK, whatnot and what.
Are you required to track that until its end destination?
So not us. Usually that is done by a third outside party, usually from whichever certification body that might be. For example, if it's from FSC, then the FSC auditor would come and they would audit how we actually get the wood out of the forest.
There you go.
And besides, when we talk about the forest, we're actually talking about or just trees in general, we're talking about a very sustainable cycle if the forestry is done correctly. So what's the difference between doing forestry correctly and doing forestry the Indonesian way? The Indonesian way is to go in, cut everything down, clear the land, bring the wood out, sell it, right? Whatever they can do. But for us, this is how we do it. So if I can bring you to an illustration.
Please, yes.
I'd like to show you a little bit. So number one, about the forestry cycle, I always like to remember the movie Tarzan, right? So we see in Tarzan when we're a little kid, there's always that massive tree of life, right? I remember watching this as a kid, you'd have all the orangutans and all those things just living here. But you see that this tree is always the biggest tree in the plot. And around it, there will always be smaller trees, right?
Yeah.
There'll be these trees, there'll be these bushes now. So illegal forestry, what they do is they come to the forest, they cut out all the trees and they bring it out. Sustainable forestry, we would actually choose the tree that we're going to cut, right?
How do you choose?
Based on size, based on age, right? We like to say in Indonesia, sudah matang belum? Jadi is it actually already, matang itu apa ya? Is it already ripe? Is it ready to be used or not? Right. For example, when we use a Meranti tree, we want to use Merantis with the diameter of about 40 centimeters and up. That would give us an indication that this is actually already ripe to use. If the tree is only 20 years old, you put it outside, it's definitely
not going to be good.
It's not going to be good. So what we do is, we will come to the forest and we'll probably cut down this big tree, right? But before that, I want to ask you, why is it only this tree growing and the other trees are not growing?
I would assume it was just age.
You would assume it's age, right? But we learned this in grade 4. It's actually photosynthesis. So because this tree is absorbing most of the nutrients from the UV lights, that's why it can grow.
Right.
And once it grows, right, all the other trees around it, they cannot grow because they don't absorb the sunlight. And so what happens if we cut this, right?
You're actually providing more for the rest.
Correct. We're actually providing more nutrients for the other trees around it for them to grow. And I understand that, a tree does not take a year to 5 years to grow. Sometimes when we talk about trees, it will take 100 years to grow.
Yeah.
So what does sustainable forestry mean? For example, let's say you have a plot of 30,000 hectares. Actually, with the certified wood, they have certain regulations. For example, you're only allowed to cut 1,000 hectares worth, and in that 1,000 hectares, you're only allowed to take out 10,000 cubic meters of wood. So let's say you cut this in the first year. But we're very selective. We call it selective cutting. So we will go to the forest, we'll mark the trees that are ready to ripe. We calculate more or less how much there is. We will cut those trees out. And then next year, we'll move to the next land.
Right.
The next 1,000 hectares. The next 1,000 hectares. So if I had a 30,000 hectare plot, I have a 30-year cycle. And by the time I come back to plot number 1, 30 years later, that small tree that I left and I didn't cut
will be already prepared and ready.
And that's what you call sustainable forestry.
Wow, amazing. Thanks for the explanation. That's actually fantastic.
Easy, right?
So easy to understand now. So I'll keep this one and I hope to remember to explain to my kids someday when I get back home. So that's very interesting, and I haven't heard an explanation like this. So taking into this, how do you think this wood construction is impacting also the life cycle cost and performance in the building in the construction sector in general?
I think the construction sector is still very new to this technology. I would say that Elementis is one of the few people or the few companies who actually trusted me to pursue this technology as well. Of course, we've had a lot of different clients in the past who I'm thankful for. Thank you very much. Thank you for working together with us and trusting us to build your projects.
Absolutely.
But none to the scale of Elementis. So I think Elementis, actually Anton gave us the opportunity to try, to do something like this. And once we sat together, I really felt that he is very vision-oriented and vision-driven. And I was sitting listening to him and I said, there's something about this guy that I feel very comfortable with in working together with him, because I can see that the obsession is not just money. right? A lot of people in Indonesia, they want to do business. The first thing they think of is money. For me, it's more about what is the big goal here? What is the big why? Why are we doing what we're doing? Felipe, we eat 3 times a day, not more, not less.
Yeah.
How much money do we need? So for me, when it comes about work, we really have to think about what are we doing with our time, because time is not something that we can buy. And it goes back to my why, right? To improve
Right.
the quality of life experience by the nation, the quality of life. So
Amazing, amazing.
important.
And again, the way you relate this information to your personal life experience is simply admirable. So I guess that your relationship with Elementis, this bond that you have created as a partner, as a critical or key partner to his construction process, it's I would assume that starts from this, let's say, emotional bond or vision, belief that you share together.
yes, correct. Because I saw that the vision and the goal was not self-centered. The vision and the goal is really for the quality of life, right? Not just for us, but for the people who use our buildings, the wellness center, the whole big vision.
The whole ecosystem.
I think the whole ecosystem is doing so much more than just saying we're a resort or we're a hotel. We're here to change luxury for money. You know, it's much more than that.
Yeah. All right, Jeshua, so we talk about Elementis, and one of the key things for the brand is to build its community through partnerships, especially in the construction sector, which is the very basic or the foundations of the resorts. So how do you feel about partnership with Elementis in the first place, and what do you see is the long-term vision of the future of these two companies working together?
Right. So number one, always look at the big vision, but then most importantly, always look at the person. Who is heading this? Who is spearheading the big idea? Because everyone has great ideas, right?
Yeah.
Everyone has big ideas. But what really determines whether this can be successful or not, it depends on the people, depends on the team, who is captaining the ship. And I think for me, when I met Anton the very first time, I just felt very refreshed. I felt very inspired. I felt that this is someone that I can trust. This is someone who's coming to me without any ill intention. This is someone that I can learn from. And you know, me being only 31 years of age today at 2024, this is, it was very important for me, right? To continuously to learn from all these people who are really passionate about what they do and how to achieve their successes. And what I saw with Elementis was that, again, you know, it's not just where it's a wellness resort or we're building a resort, but it's so much more than that. And for me, I believe that Anton was able to collect a lot of these key players, people with the same like-minded vision, and we really build a community of people who really want to work together in order to achieve and get something done. I think a lot of people just want a vision done, but they don't want to put in the hard work, right?
Yeah.
And you know, like even now in the construction site, I can see Anton, I can see Andre, they're going down to the construction site, and this is
Every day you can see them there. Yeah.
precisely, this is something that I would do, you know? And so when I felt that they are there, I got invited to Jeshua, would you like to help us become the manufacturing partner for this project? I said, of course, you know, because I will definitely always step in when I need to. And when I'm not able to, they are also able to, you know.
Right.
So
right.
at that moment when Anton was struggling with the construction site or we had issues with the local force, I would come stepping in, not because of any interest, but because we really want this whole.
Because that's a true partnership, right? It's like I can count on you, and I know you will have my back, and the other way around.
Yeah.
Well, it is at least how we would envision that a true partnership would work.
Yes, I mean the biggest problem, not just in Indonesia, I'm sure all over the world, is trust, right? That's the most
Absolutely.
expensive thing, and in Indonesia, it's very hard to get the trust.
Right.
You know, so when I found that, oh, this is someone I can trust, he can trust me, and we tried. So it wasn't just a one-off. You know, he never talked about partnership or anything like that before. He actually ordered the yoga shala from us downstairs. That was 2017.
Right. So that was how you guys started.
That's how we met. Yeah, he was still in South Korea at the time. So he contacted me via email. I was like, who is this? Who is this guy? He's Russian, living in South Korea, building timber buildings. It just didn't add up to me, right? So I sat with him on Zoom, and I think from the first Zoom, I don't know, for lack of a better term, we fell in love, yeah.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
oh, this is someone I want to work with, you know, this is someone that's really fun. And so he gave me a small project and we did that and we were able to execute it. And I think after that, we left it for years, you know, I didn't say anything to him, he didn't say anything to me. I just thought it was a one-off project, one of my other clients. And 3 years later, he called me back, he said, Jeshua, I'm doing this thing and I want you to be a part of it. I said, okay.
Wow, that's a long time. I would imagine that you guys like kept in touch after doing the first thing together.
No, we did not at all. So that was, he contacted me in 2006, early 2017. We had his structure delivered in sometime in August, if I'm not mistaken, 2017. And then 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 6 years later, Anton called me.
Wow, great story actually. How everything started.
That's a real story.
That's a real story. There you go. So we're sitting here, beautiful villa, great finishing, great feeling being inside here. I can see that this place is fully just made out of wood and glass. That's pretty much it. So can you tell me a little bit about what are the benefits of this type of construction?
Okay, that's really interesting. So let's not talk about the wood because I think everyone knows that, or not everyone knows, but a lot of people who understand, they would already understand that wood is a very warm material. It's very nice. If it's done in a good quality, it's very visually appealing and things like that. If we look into research, actually being under a timber structure is also a very good natural insulator, right, of heat. And somehow it also allows us to reduce our heart rate. Right, being in a timber building. And that's why actually this kind of building or wood was chosen by Elementis because they want people to be in the wellness resort. They want to not just get treatments and spas, but when they come back to their villas, they can also really enjoy that whole luxury of wellness.
Yes,
I
exactly.
guess, right? So why glulam construction, or why do we choose this kind of construction for these resorts, was because it's very fast. I think when you have a big goal, you have a big vision, what you're really fighting against is time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
With such a big goal, with such a big dream, with such big things that we want to achieve, and we can really see it in front of our faces, how do we expedite these processes?
So by using this technology and these construction methods and materials, you're saying that it will be much faster than others?
Definitely, because everything is already pre-produced in the factory. I don't like to use the word prefab because I think the word prefab is thrown out very easily these days, right?
I agree.
And when someone says the word prefab, we automatically think a container. We think
exactly.
something cheap.
Modified containers.
Modified container coming from China, looks like crap, looks nice in the pictures, but when you walk in, it's right? So I like to use the word DFMA, right? So we are in the business of design for manufacture and assembly. So that's a mindset. Prefab is a process, okay? So when we were creating this building together with the Elementis team of architects and our engineers, what we were able to do was create a simple design, let the material talk for itself. But what is the construction system? What is the joints that we have to use so that this building can be assembled very quickly? Right? Just to give you a comparison, if we're to do, like, let's say, the same unit using concrete, just the civil works is going to take you 6 months.
How long would it take, or did it take, to build this one, for instance? Or
just the shell, without the finishing? A month.
1 month?
1 month.
To get it up?
Local manual installation without a crane. People were just lifting the beams and putting them into place because we have pre-cut and we've prefabricated in the factory. So all these components, they're actually already machined, pre-cut, we send them drawings. It's really like Lego. So when people talk about CLT and glulam, you know, the common joke that they would use overseas is it's like plywood on steroids. You know, it's really like Lego. Again, so you get the instruction manual and you assemble it together, and boom, you have a house, and boom, you have a villa, boom, you have got a restaurant.
if you have these results, that's fantastic.
You know, even I was shocked when I came here the first time and I saw, and I said, "This is coming out from our factory."
It's real. So speed of construction, huge advantage.
Huge advantage, because in Indonesia, you're really fighting against time.
Everywhere, I would say, right?
In the world, right? But let's be real. The workmanship quality of our local tukangs or workers, you know, they're actually reducing every year, right? 20 years ago, when mobile phones and Mobile Legend wasn't a thing, you know, they were all working 8-hour shifts, 8 hour a day. Today, they're working 4 hours. In the other 4 hours, they're drinking coffee, they're having a cigarette, they're playing Mobile Legends on their phones, right? And there's not something that we can do about it. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So we always have to find out, and hence why construction takes so long in Indonesia.
Right.
Right? Like, for example, at Woodlam, we do a lot of rich people's homes. We're building the top 0.5% of Indonesia's rich people's homes. All the woodworks. Oh my goodness, you know, an architect would come up with the design. They would build the civil structure of this building. Just the civil works, concrete itself, would take 2 years. And the finishing would take another 2 years.
What would it be, just
on average,
number of ideas?
4 to 5 years for it to completely build a house. So can you imagine if your kid was 10 years old? You build him a children's bedroom, right? Mm-hmm. By the time that house is finished, he's 15. He doesn't want to live in a children's bedroom
He's about
anymore.
to leave the house already.
He wants to, you know, have his own room, bigger, things like that, right?
But that is fantastic, and I think that's something that most of people, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know about the speed of construction, and I think we are just getting started. Like, what other benefits you can see? Like, I'm not sure, but maybe maintenance of the place would it change?
I think one of the other things that is of benefit is fixed price. I think that's very important.
Right.
Again, we're able to, because everything is pre-manufactured in the factory, we are able to precisely calculate how much is the cost, what is required, this is the upfront amount, and until that scope is finished, you're not going to spend more, you're not going to spend less, right?
Which is what always happened in construction, I would say.
All over the world.
All over the world.
Right? If you, like in Indonesia, especially in Indonesia, you know, traditional construction, there's a BOQ, what we call RAB, that will cost, right? And that's a moving cost. Mm-hmm. The longer the project takes, that will always move forward.
Of course, yeah.
Right? And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, or they don't realize it because they say the upfront cost, this is cheap, I'll change it in 2-3 years. Let's be honest, once you build a house, you're not going to touch it for the next 10 years.
Yes, exactly.
You're not going to maintain it, right? Forget about it. So with this building, what makes it very specific, actually, we designed this building to be very low maintenance. If you realize that there's a lot of overhangs surrounding the whole building because we don't want the wood to be directly damaged by the UV and the rain, so we do an overhang as big as possible.
Right.
That way, when it rains or when there's sun, it's not really directly hitting the
right.
wood, and that's what causes the long-term durability. So Indonesia, we actually have a Woodlam Indonesia Woodlam University series on YouTube, so if you want to ask any technical questions in regards to termites, fire, earthquake, we've answered it all there.
Are you saying that this type of construction can resist it all?
Yes, not resist it all, but it really depends on how you treat it, right? So in Indonesia, the common understanding, how do you go against termites, is just to suntik tanah, or you call it soil injection. Mm-hmm. But if you read, the chemical compound is called fipronil, it's guaranteed only for 5 years. Okay, so imagine this situation. We're building a house, day number 1, making the concrete slab, we're putting this chemical, 5 years later, it will disappear, right? The house is completed in 4 years. So within 1 year, the homeowners stay there. They say, oh, my door is eaten by termites. My kitchen set is eaten by termites. Because they don't do it again. And that's not enough, right? So for termites, there's actually 5 steps that you must take. I can explain all that, but I think better in Woodlam Indonesia University.
That's why the series exists, right? So earthquake-proof, fire resistant,
and termite also.
And termite. Wow, amazing. There's so much benefits. I think many people, just like me, I have no idea. So
I think the biggest benefit would be for the developer, actually. Because as a developer, you know, even if this construction was to cost a little bit or not way more, if you were to do traditional construction, let's say for a 25 villa resort, it could take you 3 years to 5 years, right? And let's say you were to spend $100 million, for example. If you were to do it in wood, maybe it will only take you 1 year, but it might cost you $150,000, $150 million, for example. But you get your money back way quicker.
Out of your financial model, you will get the returns much faster. So at the end of the day, still much more what you gain.
Exactly. So when you're asking why financially should we use this kind of construction? Actually, the financial benefit, why? Because of speed of construction. Everything else is a bonus. That is nice, that is warm, that is comfortable,
it's healthy,
that is sustainable, it's a bonus.
I love it. So, Elementis, as a brand, as a concept, as an ecosystem, as a community, what does it mean to you and how would you describe it, whether it's a sentence or a word?
It's like the Tesla of wellness.
The
You know,
Tesla
I think
of
that's a
wellness.
very big thing for me to say, but I sort of feel as an Indonesian local living in Indonesia, no one has this great idea. We've been in the business of accommodation and apa namanya, accommodation and hospitality, right? One of the biggest players in the world is Bali.
Absolutely,
Right?
yes.
But no one comes up with this idea, you know, of having a wellness resort that is very, you create an ecosystem, somewhat like Tesla, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Involving technology. We
I
have,
can see the relation.
yeah, like in this building itself, we have 4 new technologies that are used for construction that even I have not heard of. And so that's why Elementis, this partnership, I'm bombarded with new things every day and I
Yeah,
love
of course,
it.
that's the great thing about these partnerships, that is bringing like a new innovations, brilliant people, all different sorts of experts in their fields,
Mhm.
and putting them all together to build this amazing concept, these new buildings, this new ecosystem, and you know, who knows what new things are coming down the pipe for the brand and everything that is happening. So super excited to continue to see what's coming.
Yeah, me too.
Jeshua, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an amazing conversation. You are truly an expert in good, and I love the passion you have in your business. The way you relate to your emotional part and the business is simply admirable. So thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to having another session maybe in the future with you.
Thank you, Felipe. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Pleasure.